Hey everyone, this is Lisa from Life in Layout, and welcome back to day number 21 of March Madness. Today's page map sketch comes from August of 2020. I pulled out the Frozen Friends mini kit from Kellybell Designs to document some photos of us at the, for the first time in forever, Frozen sing-along celebration in Hollywood Studios. My friend Christina and her daughter joined me on this specific day, and so everything that we did was centered around her daughter enjoying Hollywood Studios. I pulled out this craft basil cardstock that actually has textured polka dots on it. And I'm also going to be using several pieces of paper from the collection. I used the print and cut features from the silhouette to cut out the castle, the cards, as well as some of the elements. Once I got the first set of embellishments cut out, I went ahead and added the second sheet of paper onto my mat and put it back through the silhouette to cut out that set. I knew I wanted to add a border to this light blue paper, and I'm going to add this to either side of the layout, and I'm going to be doing some stitching on it as well. I did have to use my X-Acto knife a little bit to cut out some of these snowflakes since they are so very intricate. For that teal heart, I added the offset, which gave it the white border. But then I forgot to turn off the cut lines for the heart itself, so it actually cut out the offset and the heart, so it looks like I didn't put an offset on that teal heart. The first thing I'm going to start out with is layering up some of the cards that are in this collection. I wanted to showcase that even though I use the print and cut features, these particular pieces can be easily fussy cut out. You would print the card itself in whatever size you need. For me, I needed 2 3x4 cards. And then you would layer up the pieces that are on the card. For this particular one, I'm going to be using 2 pieces of the ribbon and then that circle element to lay on top of it that says "For the first time in forever, the Frozen sing-along." You could very easily fussy cut those pieces out and add them to the card. I just used some foam adhesive on the ribbon as well as that circle piece so that it gave that card some dimension. I'm going to do almost the exact same thing for this 3x4 card where I have the same ribbon that I used for the other card. I'm going to use my distress ink to ink up the edges and use some fun foam on the card itself to add some dimension with these ribbons, as well as that Believe in the Magic. That one is a little bit more difficult because of that snowflake in the center, but it really isn't a whole lot because a majority of the snowflake is contained on that blue circle that's in the center of that embellishment piece. So if you don't have a digital die cutting machine, don't shy away from digital cuts because you can fussy cut some of these embellishments and make them work for your layout. Once I got all of the pieces down, I did decide to ink up the edges of some of my embellishment pieces, and then I decided to cut out the photos. I did use Canva to create a collage of some of the photos from the stage show. I had zoomed way in so that I could show you the inking, and I forgot to zoom out, but it's only for a little bit and you're still able to see everything. For the pink paper in the center, I knew that I needed to place my photos on the layout so that I could make sure that I cut the paper in the right area so that I can hide the fact that I don't have a wide format printer. Spoiler alert, I did not do a good job at all with this. I absolutely laid out my photos so I knew exactly where I needed to cut my paper. And I even pulled out my T-square ruler and measured where I was going to cut it. It still didn't matter. I still had issues with it. And the issues that I have are the fact that the paper needed to go up a little bit further and I just didn't do the math correctly. I absolutely could have gotten away with just one sheet of paper on either side of the layout, but at first I thought I was going to be able to span the entire center of the layout with one sheet of paper, and I don't know what I was thinking, because even if I did have a 12-inch sheet of paper, the centerpiece is larger than 12.5 because the left-hand side of the layout is 7.5 inches and the right-hand side of the layout is 6 inches. That doesn't add up to 12 inches, but I wasn't doing the math properly. So I'm going to struggle with this pink paper a lot. Or maybe it's purple. I think it is purple. I'm not sure. It's supposed to match Anna's coat, and I think it is a purple color. Now that I'm looking at it, I do think it's purple. Either way, I struggle a lot with this particular piece of paper, and I do finally get it down on the left-hand side. I added the paper to the top and the bottom. I have no idea why I thought it was so important that these pattern papers matched up, because they were going to be covered by the photos, so it didn't matter that they matched up. But again, in that moment, I was very adamant that they had to match up. I finally got it down, and then I decided to add this blue paper that has the snowflakes on it over to the left, just like the sketch calls for. I did leave the far left-hand side of the paper without adhesive, so it would make it a little bit easier to add the light blue and the dark blue paper down. Once I got the darker blue paper down, I did bring back my photos to determine where I needed to cut that lighter blue paper. So again, making sure that I covered up those seams. I put my T-square ruler underneath that paper in the center to make sure that I lined that up properly. And I want to pat myself on the back for doing it on the left-hand side, because I don't do it on the right-hand side. Once I get the paper down, then I'm going to go ahead and add the photos as well as my card. For the left-hand side of the photo, I did take some stock photos from my Disney Photo Pass. If you purchase the Photo Pass from Disney, you can get cast members to take your photos around the park. They have Photo Pass photographers all over the park. And what's great about the photos that they take is that they will also include stock photos for the areas that you're taking. So when my daughter's friend got her photo taken with Olaf close to the Frozen sing-along area, we also got this stock photo of Elsa and Anna in front of the Hollywood Studio sign. So that is the photo that's on the far left-hand side. And then I also have photos from the stage show. I have the photo of Olaf and Elsa and Anna that's going to be on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side of the layout, I'm going to have that photo collage that I created in Canva, and I do have a template for that in my Facebook group, but I will have a tutorial on that very soon. Those photos actually came from the Disney's Facebook page. They had posted photos of the stage show at Christmas time, because Olaf only is in the stage show during the Christmas season. So I pulled those photos from Disney's Facebook page. And then there is a selfie of myself, my friend Christina, and her daughter waiting for the show. So I did want to point out that I only had one photo from this stage show, but I was able to pull in several other photos, whether they were from the Photo Pass, as well as photos taken right before the show, and then the photos from the Facebook group, to really bring in this double page layout. I struggled so much with the paper on the left-hand side of the layout that when I went to put the paper on the right-hand side of the layout, I only had scraps left and it wasn't going to work. So I did end up reprinting the paper that's in the center. And if I had cut the paper like I did on the right-hand side of the layout, I wouldn't have struggled so much on the left-hand side. But again, hindsight is always 20/20. So once I laid the paper down in the center, I laid out my photos as well as the castle at the bottom, because I wanted to see how much of the paper I wanted on the right-hand side of the layout. So then I cut both pieces so that they lined up, and then you can see that that light blue paper was right there, and I didn't add it to the layout. I inked up my edges of the center paper. I laid down that dark blue paper. I tried out my photos. I trimmed down the dark blue paper because I wanted my photo to overlap just a little bit onto the background paper. I inked up those edges, and by doing all of that, I forgot about that light blue paper because I have shoved it further over to the right, and you can barely see it on the screen, because then I'm going to go ahead and put my adhesive down, which I specifically didn't add to the far right-hand side so that I could tuck in that light blue paper. I also want to say that I feel like I have run out of so much adhesive. I feel like it's like every 4 or 5 videos that I'm posting, I am changing the adhesive on my tape gun. So I'm using a lot of adhesive this month, which is great because that means that I'm getting a lot of layouts completed. I did have to pull out my T-square ruler and my X-Acto knife because my photos were not the same size as my card on the left-hand side of the layout. And I noticed that when I tried to line up the photo on the right. Once I got the collage photo down, I went to add the 3x4 card and realized that I needed to ink the edges, but that wasn't until after I put the adhesive on the back, and then I put the 3x4 card on top of my photo, so I had to peel that up. Luckily, I didn't do any damage to my photo, but I had to be very careful pulling that card up. And then finally, I got the selfie of us down on the very far right-hand side and realized that I forgot the light blue paper. So I'm going to struggle to get this light blue paper back down underneath the purple paper as well as the selfie of us. I had to pull out my spatula tool to make sure that I pulled up the adhesive, as well as using my T-square roller to make sure it was all straight. But I finally got it down, and it's like I added it from the beginning. Now, I did design this layout on my Silhouette Studio. I do plan to have tutorials next month on how I plan out my layouts, as well as how I use that planning to help size my images. I prefer my images to be a little bit larger, like that castle that's over on the right hand side. I feel like that's not a size of an embellishment that I would get in an embellishment pack that I purchase. So that is one thing that I'm really enjoying about purchasing digital content and printing them at home and cutting them out, is that I'm able to get much larger embellishments. So I decided to add that castle, and then I have an embellishment cluster on really the both sides of my layout. And then I'm also going to have an embellishment cluster above the selfie. Once I laid everything out to where I thought it was going to work on the layout, I realized that I wanted to stitch on this layout. I really like this border punch because it already includes the holes with it. So I just have to go ahead and punch the holes into my background paper, and I can stitch right along that border. I decided to add some white thread just to give it a tone-on-tone look. Even though that paper is a light blue, it does have a white pattern to it. I did slow the video down here so that you can see the details of that border punch with the stitching. And then I'm going to start embellishing my layout. By designing my layout on my Silhouette, it does help make the clusters come together a lot easier because I've really already designed it. I started out with that darker craft color snowflake and added that flat to the layout. I then used some fun foam to add dimension behind the light blue banner. I also curled up the edges of that flower with my poker tool and then added some foam adhesive to the back of the edges of the flower, then used some liquid adhesive in the center of it to make that piece flat to the layout. And then I added a pair of mittens. Then I started to work on the right-hand side of the layout. I added some adhesive to the back of that castle, but then decided that I wanted to go ahead and start working on the cluster first. And you'll notice that this side of the layout mimics the other side. So I also have a banner over here, as well as a snowflake and some flowers. I was trying to have flowers from both Elsa and Anna on either side. The flower that's on the right hand side is that purple color with the blue center. And then over on the left hand side, I have the flower that looks more like Elsa. So I felt like I was representing the sisters in both of those clusters. For the area that's above the selfie, I started with a snowflake, and then I did put one of the flare pieces inside of a bottle cap. If you cut out the flares in a 1-inch circle, you can add them to these bottle caps. I do have them linked below in my Amazon storefront. That particular flare says "Some people are worth melting for." Then I also added a heart as well as a crown to that cluster. I then wanted to make sure that I had a bottle cap in each one of the clusters. So over on the left-hand side, I have a snowflake that I added to a silver bottle cap. Over on the right-hand side, I have a teal bottle cap that has a flare in it that says "Magical Memories of Disney's Frozen Fun." And then basically I'm just pulling the embellishment pieces that I cut out and planned for my layout into each one of the clusters. All right, guys, so I thought I was done with this layout, but then I decided that I needed a title. My original thought was that I was going to use that 3x4 card that says "For the First Time in Forever, Frozen Sing Along," which is the name of the show. But when I stepped away from the layout, I decided that I needed a different type of title. And then I thought, why not show you guys how I'm going to create this title? So I have my Silhouette Studio opened, and I'm going to bring in a couple of the digital pieces. To bring in the digital pieces, I go to the top of the screen where there is a little folder, and if you hover over it, it says "Open." I'm then going to find the images that I want to use on my computer. I'm going to first start out with the alphas for the Frozen Friend collection. and I'm going to spell out Arendelle. So I'm going to need the capital A, and I am holding down my control key, and I'm going to select the rest of the letters. So I need the R, I need the E, N, D, I already have the E, and the L. And then I'm going to select OK. This is going to bring in each alphabet on a different page in the silhouette. What I like to do is just select my letter, and I'll do Control X, which that means it's going to cut my letter. I'm going to go to my previous page, so selecting the previous tab. I'm going to do Control V, which is going to paste that letter. And then I'm going to take my mouse and I'm going to scroll over my letters to select both of them and repeat the process of cutting and pasting it until I get all of my letters on the same mat. Once I get them all on the same mat, I will go ahead and select all of them and make them much smaller because I do not need my title letters to be 9 inches tall. I'm then going to unselect all of them by clicking outside of the letters. I'm going to take the top letter and move it over to the far edge of the mat, and then I'm going to again select all of the letters. I'm going to go up to the top of the screen until I see these like 3 lines. And on the bottom row is an icon that says space horizontal. And this is going to spread out my letters so that there is equal space between each one of them. And this just gets them so they're not all stacked on top of each other. I then go in and delete all of the extra pages. I do this by selecting the X on that particular page and then saying that I do not want to save that page. I'm then going to spell out Arendelle. When I get to the E, I will highlight my previous E. I'll then come up to the top of the screen and select the 2 little squares that allow me to duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate it twice since I do need 2 E's. I'm also going to duplicate my L. I know that I don't want this amount of space in between all of my letters, so I'm going to move my E over so that it overlaps the L just a little bit. And then I'm going to do that same process of spacing them evenly by selecting all of the letters, coming up to the top of the screen and select space horizontal. And I'm also going to align them to the bottom. I'm going to zoom in just so that it's easier to see. And I like to use this zoom option that allows me to drag over the shape that I want to zoom into. I actually want each one of my letters to overlap, so I'm going to play around with them until I find a configuration that I like. This is all personal preference. Some of my letters are going to be on top of each other, some of them are going to be behind, and I'm really just going to play around with it until I find something that I like. I also have the option to send my letters forward and backwards. And I do that by selecting the letter, and then at the top I have the option to bring it forward, and then at the top I have the option to bring it to the front, send it to the back, bring it forward, and bring it backwards. The first 2 is going to send it all the way to the front or all the way to the back. The last 2 are going to bring it forward or backwards one by one. Once I get the letters how I personally prefer them, I'm going to go ahead and group them together. I do that by selecting all of them and then right-clicking and selecting group. I want to create a border around my letters. Currently, there is a white border around my letters, but I want a second border. To create a second border, I'm going to come over to the far right-hand side and select the offset panel, which is a little star that has a star inside of it. I'm then going to select offset. My personal preference is 0.050, but you can change your offset to be as large or as small as you would like it. Once you've found the offset that you prefer, then select apply. As you can see, I now have an offset of my letters. I want my entire background to be solid. I do not want this little part of the D to be cut out. So what I would do is I would right click on my image, select release compound path. I'm then going to need to select off my image and then come in and just select that little piece, and I'm going to select the delete option. Now I want my offset to be printed as black. So what I would do is I would select my offset, come over to the fill panel, which looks like a paint palette, and then I'm going to select black. I'm then going to select both of my images, and at the top, I have the center option. It's a little plus sign with a circle in the middle of it. When I select that, it's going to bring my images together and have them overlap, and they will be centered on top of each other. I'm then going to go over to the send option in the upper right hand corner. And if I was to send this to Silhouette just as it is, it would cut out these overlapping images, and I don't want it to do that. I'm going to unselect my images by selecting off of them. I'm then going to select the top image, and then I'm going to come down to the bottom where it says ignore selected lines. So now the Silhouette is going to cut out the outer edge, which is that black edge, and I will have the word Arendelle spelled out in the yellow, as well as the white, and then the black. So it will look like it's been layered 3 times. Now my title is going to be Visit to Arendelle, but I don't want to spell out Visit to in this same font. So I'm going to go back to my images by opening up a new image by selecting open in the upper left hand corner. I'm going to find the images that I want to use, and the one that I want to use is in this word flare, and there is a word flare that says Visit to Arendelle. So I'm going to go ahead and open that by selecting the image and then selecting OK in the bottom right. I'm going to move my Visit to Arendelle over to my alpha page by clicking on the flare, selecting Control X to cut it, going back to my page that has Arendelle on it, and Control V to paste it. And then I just want this Visit to. I don't need this Arendelle since I'm going to have it in the alpha set. So what I'm going to do is come over to the left-hand side to the drawing tool. I'm going to select the rectangle, and I'm going to make the rectangle go over just the Visit to area. I zoomed in quite a bit so that you can see just the 2 boxes. I will need to go over to the left and select the arrow that says select when you hover over it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the Visit to Arendelle, and I'm going to come up to the top and I'm going to look at the width and the height. The height of this image is 1.896. I need to make my box also 1.896. So I'm going to move the box down just a little bit so that I can select it. And I'm going to come up to the box and change it to 1.896. You do need to make sure that the aspect ratio is off. And then I'm going to come in and select both of my images. I'm going to come up to the align option, and I'm going to align them to the left. And I'm also going to align them to the middle. Now the box that I just created is exactly over the Visit to Arendelle box. I also need to pay attention to how much space is between the edge to this V, as well as how much space is from the O to the edge. If I needed more space, I would come in and select just my box, and I can come up to my options at the top and change my width to a little bit larger. And then I need to align them again to the left and the center to make sure that they are in the right place. I'm then going to come over to the right hand side to the modify panel, which is a rectangle and a circle that overlap each other. And I'm going to select crop. This is going to remove the Arendelle from my image. I'm going to zoom back out until I see both of my images. And now I'm going to make my Visit to smaller so that it fits in between my A and my D of Arendelle. Okay, so now I have the Visit to the size that I want it in ratio to the word Arendelle. Now I need to figure out the size of my image that I want this entire thing to be. Currently, the word Arendelle is just over 9 inches long. So that's going to be almost the entire length of my layout, and I'm not sure that I want that. Now I'm going to do a full tutorial on how I create my layouts in Silhouette, but I just want to show you this aspect of it. So I'm going to go ahead and select both of my images, and I'm going to select Control C, and this allows me to copy this image. I definitely want to copy the image and not cut the image, because if something happens and I mess up the image with what I'm about to do, I always have the original image that I can go back to. Now I have designed my layout on Silhouette, and as you can see, it's a little bit different than the final product, but this just gives me an idea in regards to the spacing. So I'm going to do Control V, and that's going to paste my title in this area. It does paste it behind a lot of the items, so I go up to the top and I select the bring to the front, and then I'm going to move it in place to the point where I want it on my layout. And then I'm going to resize it as well until I find a size that I think will work. Now, it doesn't have to be exact because it is going to go into your layout and it might be a little bit different on your layout, but you just want to get the general size of the item so that you don't have something that was so large or so small for a double page or even a single page layout. Now that I have it the size that I want it, I'm going to go ahead and select my items again, and I'm going to again do Control Copy. And this time I'm going to open a new page by selecting the plus sign in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to Control V to paste my item on my page. Over on the page setup, which is the piece of paper on the far right-hand side, I'm going to change my media size from 12 by 12 to letter, because I do not have a wide format printer. I only have an 8.5 by 11 printer. I'm also going to open up the modify panel and enable my registration marks. And then I'm going to move my image so that it's inside my registration marks. I can always go over to the send option in the upper right-hand corner and make sure that everything is going to cut properly, which it looks like I did not bring over my back image. So I'm going to need to go back to my design, come back over to where I have planned my image, make sure that I'm able to select the back image, come back to my new window and paste my image. Now, because I didn't paste them correctly the first time, I do need to make sure that they are centered again. So I'm going to select both of the Arendelle words, come up to the top and select center. And then I'm going to select my background Arendelle word only and send it to the back by selecting the send to back at the top. And now it's back in place. I'm going to go ahead and select both of them and then move them back into place. Then coming back over to my send option, I can see that the silhouette is going to cut a box around the word visit to, and then it's going to cut around the black background area of Arendelle. I don't currently have this computer hooked up to my silhouette, but from here I would print it and then send it to my silhouette. I do have another video where I have done this, and I will link it here for you guys so that you can see it. So now let's get back into my scrapbook room and finish this layout. All right, guys, now that we've got that all planned out, let's get that title piece cut out. As it was cutting out, I was looking at the layout and I thought, you know what, it could use something else. And I thought about what else I could add. So I started to think about Elsa and Frozen, and that led me to ice. And then I was like, oh, I need some bling all around this layout. So I pulled out my clear bling and I added it basically to every cluster. I even cut up some of the bling to add it to the crown at the top. The clear bling that I have was not as tiny as the ones that were attached to these flourish blings, so I just went ahead and cut them out. Over on the left hand side, I added a blue flourish, and then I started to look at some of the flowers as well as the other pieces and thought I could add those to the center. So I added a pink bling to the black floral at the top, and then I just started adding bling all around the layout. I was looking through my box just trying to find any of the pieces that I thought would work, and then I thought, well, maybe I should add bling to the middle of all of the snowflakes. So I added bling over on the far left-hand side in the blue, as well as over on the right-hand side. And then my title was ready to cut out. This made it super easy to add my title over to the left-hand side of my layout since I had already planned it out. I did decide to ink up the edges of both of those pieces. I'm going to add the word Arendelle flat to the layout, and then I'm going to use some foam adhesive on the visit to part. And I really like the dimension that that adds to the layout. And then that is it for this video. Here is my final layout as well as some close-ups. I did do my journaling offline, and it says, Christina, Adiola, and I had an incredible time at for the first time in forever, a Frozen sing-along celebration. We listened as the royal historians of Arendelle shared the enchanting tale of their frosty kingdom. We joined in and sang along to every song at the top of our lungs. All right, if you enjoyed this video, if you wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already and you want to see more double page layout inspiration, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Thanks everyone for watching, and I hope that you have a scrappy day.